Welcome to the STEM Pathways with Rohan Sharma podcast, where we dive into the exciting world of science, technology, engineering, and math. In each episode, we share exciting stories, groundbreaking research, and inspiring interviews with experts and enthusiasts who are pushing the boundaries of innovation. Whether you're a student, a professional, or just curious about how the world works, join us as we explore the endless possibilities of STEM. Let's get started. Today I'll be interviewing Katerina Manoff, who holds a bachelor's in international studies and business from UPenn and a master's of education from Harvard. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thanks for coming on the podcast. So to get started, I kind of wanted to ask what you're interested in high school and made you want to study international studies and business.
Well, in high school, had I would say I had a lot of academic interests. I was kind of a nerd, so I loved my math classes. I loved my language classes. I was studying Spanish, so loved learning foreign languages. I liked my ELA classes, liked to write. And so I wasn't quite sure what to study in college. I wasn't one of those kids who had, a clear career path outlined, had a clear passion. I thought I might be interested in running a nonprofit one day, but I wasn't quite sure. How do you get to that? What major that goes with. Um, how I ultimately chose my major, I think it was, a mix of my interest and frankly being an immigrant, immigrant parents were saying, study something practical. Business seemed practical to them, like something that I could go and then get a good job after studying that. And the international piece was really interesting to me to get to explore the world and want to travel, learn about new cultures. So it's kind of a combination of passion and practical considerations.
Yeah. So what was your experience like while at UPenn?
I loved it. So, I was in the Huntsman program at Penn, which is a special dual degree program where you actually get two bachelor's degrees in 4 years. And they choose a really small number of students. And my time, I think there was like 45 of us in my year. I think it's gotten a little bit bigger since then, but it's really a very special, intimate community within the much bigger university of tens of thousands of people. And I really loved that. I felt like it was the best of both worlds, right? I was in a big city, I was in a big university. There's all these opportunities academically and, in extracurricular areas as well. But at the same time, I was part of this close-knit community, international community of friends. Met my husband there. He was one of the 45 of us, and two of my best friends as well. So it was a really, really unique experience. I'm really lucky that I found the program and was accepted. And actually, at the time, I'd also gotten into Yale and Columbia, and everyone assumed I would go to Yale because it's the highest rank. But I'm really glad that I sort of followed my heart and I went to where the community felt right and the people felt like it was the best fit for me rather than looking at the rankings. So overall, yeah, really good experience.
Yeah. So what'd you do right after getting your bachelor's degree?
So maybe the one downside of where I went to school, all right, it's the Wharton School of Business. That's where I did the business half of my education. Very much, for the kind of a conveyor belt into investment banking and consulting, and a lot of pressure, regardless of what you come in with. A lot of us came in not knowing what investment banking or management consulting was. But those are, or were at the time, the most popular pathways. Seemingly the only pathways. So I ended up, especially because I still couldn't figure out, what path do I need to follow if I want to, at one point, run a nonprofit. There weren't really nonprofits recruiting at Wharton, but there were a lot of investment banks and management consulting firms. So I went to work for a couple of years at a boutique investment bank in New York called Evercore Partners. It's a good first job. Looking back, it taught me Excel analysis skills, how to make presentations, communicate information, and it helped me get on my feet financially after graduating from college and accumulate a little bit of savings. So I did that for 2 years before going back for my master's in a totally different field.
Yeah. So did you already know that you wanted to kind of go down the education route, or do you make that decision during those 2 years?
Of knew it. I was, I mentioned I had a lot of interest in in high school academically, but sort of professionally, I always had this idea of running a nonprofit and helping kids somehow, working with kids somehow. I wasn't sure. It was like a very vague idea. I didn't know, with my parents being immigrants, right? Like all their friends, were, I don't know, cleaning houses or working in construction sites, or working as sales clerks, basic jobs like that. So I didn't really have um, that sort of access to information to figure out specific career paths, but I knew that I wanted to do work that made the world a better place for young people, and education seemed like a really good fit for that. It was just a matter of, financially, frankly, it's something that I couldn't jump into right away. So yes, I knew it, and I bided my time in investment banking, and they tried to get me to stay, but I was like, nope, it is time to go do something that I'm more passionate about. And I was really excited too, having gotten, the international perspective, gotten the business education to really combine those skill sets with an education degree. I felt like it would give me a really unique skill set that I could use to build something, to build an international nonprofit one day, or, at that time, again, I didn't know. It turned out to all be leading me here, but I didn't know that. All I knew is that I wanted to get an education degree because I wanted to work with young people, helping them in some way. I knew that I didn't necessarily want to be in the classroom. I really liked the idea of, helping build an organization that had a huge impact and helped a lot of people. So yeah, that was how I decided.
Yeah, so while you're at Harvard, what kind of things were you learning?
Well, that's interesting because the program at Harvard, it's just a 1 year program. And I picked it because, again, you're going to hear a theme to my answers because of financial reasons, right? It's half as expensive as a traditional 2 year program. So I thought it would be, the right choice. But what it also meant was that, you're in and out. You don't have a lot of time to explore. So I went in with a concentration in human development and psychology. That's what I applied for. I was really interested in learning about how people learn about the brain, how people develop and grow, that sort of psychological perspective. While I was there, I learned about another concentration called technology and innovation education, and it was all about the field of ed tech, which was pretty new back then, less established than it's now, but definitely growing with a lot of innovation going on using technology to help people learn. And so I ended up taking a bunch of classes in that area as well, and learning about ed tech, and got really interested in that field. So those are kind of the two areas that I hit on, and also a little bit of background in education policy and this country's school system and all the problems and challenges that we've had historically. So a little bit of everything, a few different areas that really interested me.
Do you think that getting this master's really set you up for what you're doing right now with ENGin?
Well, to be honest, I came out feeling very, very lost. The one thing you didn't really get at Harvard was much career advice and support. So a lot of us were graduating without jobs or just going back into whatever job people had come from. And as a career changer, I didn't have that option. So it was honestly super stressful. I ended up going to a charter school network in New York City and working on testing for them, which was honestly kind of random, but I didn't want to graduate without a job. So and we were moving back to New York with my husband. He was working there. So that is where I fell in uh kind of fortuitously. And after that, I jumped around a lot. I worked for the New York City Department of Education a little bit. I had a chance to go join a couple ed tech startups, which was sort of building on what I learned about ed tech in my master's program, but uh, it was a lot of really random things, and I didn't feel like I was getting anywhere, and it was kind of confusing time in my life. Both of the ed tech startups, so one of them completely went bust and closed down due to some questionable decisions by the founder, and the other one didn't fully shut down, but was having some challenges. So it didn't turn out to be sort of like a great place for me to really build my career. So I did some freelancing, I did tutoring, writing, coaching. I at that point started working or volunteering rather at a couple nonprofits that were working with Ukrainian youth, so dipping my toes into that sector. Yes, I wouldn't say that the master's program really helped put me on any kind of path. It was still more of a labyrinth. I like to say I have a career labyrinth rather than career path. And it was a lot of experimenting and iterating and trying to find the right thing um, before I ended up starting ENGin.
Yeah, so when'd you come up with the idea for ENGin?
I'm sorry, can you say that
Yeah,
again? Cut out for a second.
yeah. Yeah, or when'd you come up with the idea for ENGin?
Mm. Got it. So I was volunteering at an organization that helps high schoolers in Ukraine apply to study abroad, get scholarships for top boarding schools, universities in the U.S. and in other English-speaking countries. And they work with, the best of the best, the top students in the entire country. And I was on the leadership team as well as mentoring directly a few students. And what I noticed is that these kids had been studying English since they were in first grade, um, most of the time, right? So for years and years and years, and they're written and their written English was solid, reading they could do, but when it came to having real conversations, there was a huge gap. And I had this one girl specifically, Elena, who just really blew me away with all of her talents. She was a nationally ranked piano player. She had perfect grades. She was like inventing complex machines and tools for her environmental work, which I couldn't even follow. So she was super, super smart, and she had no problem, writing her essays in English, communicating with me by email. But then when we got on our first Zoom call, she couldn't talk to me. She sort of froze up, and she had been studying English for 10 years. And so for me, it was a big discovery that Ukrainians, for the most part, are studying English, but they're not learning it. And I was born in Ukraine, but I came here when I was 8. So I learned English pretty young through immersion, and also had a study abroad experience in college when I was learning Spanish. And I knew in both of those cases, for both the languages I was learning, it was really like real conversations with real people that made the difference in breaking that language barrier and becoming fluent. Plus, really, discovering a new culture and building new relationships and having kind of this like immersive, multidimensional experience is what made all the difference for me. So I thought about, well, how can I do this in a more cost-effective manner? Because I knew I couldn't take Elena and like, pay for her to come to another country to practice her language, and certainly couldn't do that for large numbers of people. So I came up with this idea of sort of replicating the study abroad experience online with one-on-one connections between English speakers in the US and worldwide and English learners in Ukraine. And I thought it would be a little like, passion project, a few hours a week, maybe help a few dozen people. And of course, here we are at 50,000 people served. So it got a lot bigger than I had expected.
So what was the process like of starting an organization like this, and what struggles were you encountering on the way?
Hmm. Well, this could be a long answer. When you want to start a nonprofit, the number one advice, if you're going to Google this or read books or ask people in this space, how do I start a nonprofit? People will tell you, don't start a nonprofit. There are millions of nonprofits out there. A lot of them are duplicative. A lot of them, don't really have a great business model, which may sound counterintuitive, but just like a business, a nonprofit needs a business model of where's the money going to come from, and it's going to look a little different, right, than just selling products to customers. But ultimately, it's the same thing. You need money to fund whatever you're doing, and you need to make sure that you have, good good plan for that. So it was really scary to go for it after hearing over and over and over, well, the world doesn't need any more nonprofits. Part of the reason why I didn't jump into it earlier is that I felt like I shouldn't start a nonprofit just to start a nonprofit, that it would really need to be a really unique idea that there was a huge need for, and that would justify creating an organization. So, so I think maybe just the fear of starting something new and not having done it before would be the first piece. The second piece is so after we started as what I like I said, I thought it'd be sort of a volunteer run, very small project. I got funding to turn it into a real organization, to hire a team of paid staff. And it was seed funding. And so after a couple of years, we needed to start fundraising, and I had to learn how to get hundreds of thousands of dollars, having never done that before, being a total nerd, who's not great at networking and fundraising. And and develop that completely new skill set. That was hard. Um, the full-scale invasion by Russia of Ukraine, right? It was hard enough to be a CEO, but being a wartime CEO, and that's something I had signed up for, and very much turned everything upside down and forced us to have to think about, how do we adjust our program? Do we even keep going? Um, just the rapid growth as well. The last thing I'll mention, right? Going to 50,000 people and a team of over 30 staff in less than 5 years means that you're always changing and adjusting and trying to keep up the quality of everything while you're quickly changing it all to adjust to the bigger size. So yeah, lots of challenges. It's been quite a journey.
So, what are your current goals with ENGin, and where do you see it going in the future?
Well, that's a great question. It's so hard to plan, honestly, because of the war, right? And just not knowing what's going to happen in Ukraine. So I feel like all of our plans are kind of asterisk, it's a pending outcome of war. There's two things I think about broadly. One is scale. So what really makes us unique, right, is the scale we're operating at. We did not invent teaching English. We did not invent speaking on Zoom. What we invented, we're still almost 5 years later, the only organization doing this is running this huge program where anyone at any time can sign up and be matched to a learner if they're a volunteer, right, or to a volunteer if they're a learner in Ukraine. And part of it is not just getting big to get big, but it's kind of about getting to a critical mass where English fluency and global competence become the norm in Ukraine, right? To where you have an entire generation of people who are globally connected, who can speak English confidently, and that can lift the entire country economically. And the full scale invasion makes them even more urgent because now it's not just a matter of sort of catching up with Western European nations, right? It's about rebuilding an economy that's been really shaken to the core. And that very much is going to depend on international partnerships and working in the global market. And you need to have a population that's comfortable interacting across borders in order to do that. So one piece I think is really important is just to keep growing and reach as many people as possible to a point where the impact goes beyond even those who directly participate in our program, right? Because we're kind of like lifting up the entire country. So that's something I dream about. Um, the other piece is thinking, well, can we engage deeper with our students and do more for them? Because right now the core program is 1 hour a week of conversation practice. It has a tremendous impact in terms of confidence building, breaking the language barrier, cultural exchange, friendships that form, mentorship, right? So it's already um, really impactful, but it's still limited because it is 1 hour a week. It's one general program. So we're looking at, well, can we engage with specific subgroups of Ukrainians? For example, Ukrainian nonprofit leaders, Ukrainian entrepreneurs. We did a pilot and we're hoping to repeat a program with Ukrainian teachers, English teachers, right? Where can we more deeply help um, selected people who can then impact hundreds of and thousands of other Ukrainians in their work, right? Because one nonprofit leader, one teacher, one entrepreneur can make a huge impact on many, many others. And so looking for those levers where we can have the greatest impact is something I'm thinking about a lot. All comes back to funding. Honestly, it's as a nonprofit, right? We need to figure out where we get money for all of these things. So that's also my other asterisk along with the war, right? How much money will we get, where, and for what? Because sometimes, you can only get money to do specific things. That's going to guide it. But yeah, I would love to reach many, many more people, and I would love to do more of these specialized programs to reach those who can make the biggest difference in their country after going through our program.
So, right now, what kind of people are funding ENGin?
We're mostly funded by our volunteer community at this point. So that is direct donations as well as people have a fundraiser, whether it's Facebook birthday fundraiser or they hold an event or something at in their community. Or if people are working, they will sometimes have employer programs who are corporations will give grants to nonprofits recommended by their employees. So really it's just very grassroots, real people coming together to support it. And we're not associated with any big organization or anything like that. I mean, it's just me, a regular person. Um, because what we're doing is so unique, there's not really like grants we could apply for, from government entities or foundations or anything like that. So we need to really rely on our community, and I think we've been lucky that we have been able to secure the funding we need for the most part from that source. The other piece is that this year we did introduce a one-time fee for students, which has been really great in terms of filling in those gaps so we can have enough money to stay open, as well as raising student motivation. And we see that people actually value it even more when they have to pay for it. And we charge, it's something like $20 now, or $18. It's going to go up a bit next year as a one-time fee for an entire year of ENGin. So even in Ukraine, it's very accessible, very affordable. And we're launching a scholarship program soon for those who can't afford to even pay that, small one-time fee. So it's a combination pretty much of donations, which mostly come from the volunteer community, and the program services revenue, which is the one-time fee for students.
So one thing I really wanted to ask you is how'd you come up with the name?
Oh, that's a that's a great question. I don't have a great answer. I didn't come up with the name. It was an idea of some of the students who were helping me set it up. So from the very beginning, I had a team of Ukrainian student interns who were involved with the project, and they came up with the name. And I think the idea is it's going to play on English, right? But also it's the engine that's fueling Ukraine's growth. So that's the idea behind it. Funnily, after running it for a few years, I see the name can be quite confusing. A lot of people mispronounce it. Yeah, people say, like, what is this name and where did it come from? But now it is what it is, and I'm proud of what it's grown. So we're sticking with it. But yes, hopefully we will truly grow to become, an engine impacting Ukraine on a national scale.
Yeah. So for my last question, I wanted to ask if you have one piece of advice for someone who's still in high school or early in college wanting to follow a similar career path as you.
Oh my gosh, that's a really good question. If you don't mind, I'm going to give two pieces of advice. One is talking to people who have done similar things and really trying to hear about their paths. And because the nonprofit sector is so diverse, there's very different types of nonprofits. The closer you can get to the type of work you want to be doing, right? Like I run, basically, this is like a Silicon Valley tech startup in nonprofit form, right? That's going to be very different from, a community-based organization that's providing physical services in person in a particular community in terms of pretty much every aspect. Um, so seeking out people and asking for advice and learning from real experiences, it's I think really really important. The other thing is not jumping in to launch something just because you want to run an organization. I get a lot of outreach from, you know, high school and early college students who are CEOs of their own nonprofits, and it really feels like they're vanity organizations there to boost the kid's resume, frankly, without really reflecting a need in the community. So I always tell everyone, actually, of any age, whether they're starting a for-profit or nonprofit business, because this happens, when entrepreneurs want to start a for-profit business, they start with what they like, with their passion, their interests, their skills. They're not starting with the need and with who needs that. So ENGin came about because I saw people having a very specific need, because I looked all around saying, well, where can I send my mentees to improve their spoken English? And realize there's nothing like this out there, and I have the skills to build something like this. I waited until I was, gosh, how old was I? I was 32, I guess, when I started ENGin, even though it's something I dream about since I was in high school. So, not doing something just for the sake of doing it and really making sure you're grounding it in a real need, I think is the number one thing. And then it grows very naturally, right? Because it's not, you're not forcing it upon anyone. Um, yeah, I think that's basically it. And yeah, happy to connect with, with anyone of your listeners who would have any follow-up questions and might be interested in following this kind of path.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast today.